Hey everyone, this is Sam from SaberiSixRealEstate as well as Remax Realtron Realty Inc. I'm here with my friend Ali from the Home Investors team, and he's also a broker with Remax, a colleague of mine. This is the Above Asking podcast, episode 4 now.
Cuatro.
Yeah, 4. So please subscribe or watch and listen to the whole thing and see if you like it, and then subscribe.
Just subscribe.
Yeah.
Click the notifications and check us out on Instagram. AliM.Realtor and
SaberiSixRealEstate at gmail.com for my email, Instagram, SaberiSixRealEstate, all that jazz. So anyways,
there we go.
Screw the self-promotion. Let's just get on with the conversation.
Whoa, come on now.
I don't know. We should actually provide some product before we promote ourselves, you know? Have a conversation, not just promote.
All right. What's on the agenda today?
So I actually thought you actually were quite busy today. You were in Aurora for showings, right?
Aurora, we went to put up a for sale sign for listing that we have coming to market. We also listed a condo downtown in Yorkville just a couple of days ago. Yep. Yesterday, I was touring some properties for another client. And then I also did showings for lease for another client. So it's been a busy few days.
Where were the showings for lease?
Richmond Hill.
Richmond Hill?
So yeah. We're looking at either basement apartments or condos. I'm trying to push her into a condo because I know she'd be more comfortable there long term.
Yep.
She's new to the country, so that's going to be a little bit of a doozy get her into a spot.
For people who don't know, typically with leases or rental agreements, when you're negotiating on your behalf of your client, and if your client happens to be the tenant, really the negotiation is all about just the information referring to the credit reports, other financial reports such as job letters, also references, and all basically the documentation that would show that this individual can A, afford the rent, and B, is a good tenant. That's really, in my experience, all that there is to negotiating in leases and rentals. The price is always just agreed upon. Mostly, there's no unless you're talking about very luxurious rentals,
right?
Or a higher end, like I would say, $2,700 and above. Then maybe you just negotiate here and there, $100, $50 in terms of price. But typically, it's just all about proving that your tenant is good, or if you're on the landlord side, screening the tenant, right?
Right. So, in the case of this client, I'm still waiting on the credit report, which at this point, I don't even think she has much credit, which is going to be problematic, especially in the eyes of the landlord, to see a tenant that doesn't have credit or very little credit because she's a newcomer and she really doesn't have much established credit. Those are the hardest cases. So it's going to be pretty tough in that case, yes. And I hope she's got money saved because usually, in the eyes of the landlord, if I was representing the landlord, I would say, okay, you don't have credit. You don't have, the best job security. What's your client going to offer in order for us to make an exception to take her on as a tenant? And then I see what the landlord or the tenant and the tenant's agent is willing to offer. Mm-hmm. Because at this point, I have every reason to say, you know what? You don't cut it, and we're not interested in entertaining your offer. Based on just, if you're going to submit a credit report or you don't have credit in this case, so you don't have credit, you don't have real job security because you've been at your job for maybe 2 to 3 months. You're not even past the probationary period, so you could really easily lose your job within the next 2 or 3 months.
Like one of the hardest cases with tenants, because obviously we did a lot of leases when we started out, right?
Right.
That's basically when you start out in real estate, especially a city like Toronto, I would say, you work with a lot of leases.
Yeah.
And I learned from those experiences, and it's not as if I'm above leases now, right?
No.
But
we still take them on.
Yeah, I'll take them on.
Because eventually...
yeah, exactly. Because eventually they will buy with you, hopefully.
Yeah, that's the thing. You got to nurture those clients. And
yeah. But my point is, though...
help them when they need help.
Sorry?
You got to help them when they need help.
Exactly.
And then eventually they come back around and they want your help again. And And that's happened to me a few times. But sorry, that you were saying something.
No, I was saying from my experience, I've learned to say to my clients, if they have a similar portfolio as yours, a newcomer, credit really not established, right?
Right.
Moreover, not having worked for too long, and maybe the job is not that good either. The income is low. I always say, look, if that's the case, it's going to be hard. What we have to do is see if how much you can put in advance.
Right.
So typically, just to explain to people, the customarily, and according to once again just regular practice, is first and last. Tenants provide first and last as a deposit.
Right.
But in these situations or other situations where you do have good clients, sometimes if you just want to solidify their case, they do more than first and last up front. They might do the 4 months up front.
Right.
They might do 6 months. I've had situations we could talk about later though, where they put the whole year up front.
Yeah, we've actually one of my colleagues and he has a lease. It was in Lawrence Park.
Yeah.
And the property, the house, the lease on this was how much? $6,000
$6K a month?
Yeah, it's Lawrence Park. It's a detached house in Lawrence Park.
But no, I'm saying this. Whoever the tenant was paid $6K a month up front.
They didn't pay up front the entire year.
Oh, okay.
They paid, I think, almost 4 or 5 months up front because they were competing against another applicant.
Was this? I don't. Obviously, you might not know either, but I'm assuming it was some sort of CEO. Or
they're well off. They lived in a neighborhood, and so they, I don't know about their specific circumstances, but they decided to lease, and they paid almost, I think, 5 months up front at $6,000 a month. So obviously, they have the money.
Yeah.
That's not an issue, right? So the point in this is that it's not just, new immigrants or someone that doesn't have a lot of information to show and to establish credibility. It's even when you're competing against another applicant, and in this case, they really want the property. They're willing to be like, all right, we want it. Here's 5-6 months up front. Let's nab this property. So that's there. But we've had other properties the rent was maybe $3,000.
Yeah.
And they paid the entire year up front, and that's it. They took it.
Yeah.
But that was, once again, that was a newcomer. I think there were students that were coming, and they have rich parents back home, and they said, I need a place to live, but they don't have credit. They don't have an employment letter. They're students, and students are, unfortunately, they do carry a bad rep in the city of Toronto because they come not a lot of times, but often cases. I hear a lot of stories where they've ruined the property, and then they take off. They either find another spot or they go back home, and there's absolutely no way to trace them down. And so that's why some landlords will say, we're not interested. And in that case, maybe the agent coaches their client and says, listen, if you want a place in the city of Toronto and you don't have any of this stuff, you pay 6 months or a year up front.
Yeah.
And those that have it, do it. And those that don't, they have to find other accommodations that are perhaps in unfavorable places. Right.
It really does solidify your case. Like you said, it's not just about newcomers, even if you're wealthy and you're trying to compete with someone. But interestingly enough, I actually had a client who was able to pay the whole year up front.
Right.
And I was negotiating on his behalf for this property he wanted. And I obviously didn't go in with telling the individual that he can pay a whole year up front. Like I tried, obviously we're trying to
you don't want to offer
money
that.
For I mean, it really does
up front
depend on how dire your clients. If you need a place within 2 days, I'm not going to play around, right? But if you have time, I'm going to play around a bit.
Right.
So
of course,
it got to a point where eventually I had to get to the point. Okay, we can pay the whole year up front at asking price, right? And funny enough, and this is a thing that just to show that even though if you pay a whole year up front, still doesn't guarantee you anything, because the landlord told me, yeah, but we have no guarantee that they're going to pay the second year. They might just stay and not pay rent after that 12 months, right? You get what I'm saying?
Right.
So even
That's
then,
a smart landlord. They've been around the block. They know what they're
they've
doing.
probably had very bad experiences. And that's another side of it too, right? Landlords, I understand why they screen so hard. I really do. I worked with landlords. I've been on the landlord side many times. Like I am very, very precise because if I bring in bad tenants, they don't pay rent. I'm the one who's getting a phone call. You know?
Yeah, you eventually you probably lose that client because they've lost money.
And I'll be honest.
It's a learning experience. You know, these things happen. Like, I mean, here's the one thing that people don't understand. Well, it's not that they don't understand, but I think some people have some trouble understanding how these things work. Just because you have an employment letter or credit report doesn't necessarily mean that you're guaranteed to move into a certain property. Landlord can still say no. We're not interested in your application. Like I had one client who had a credit score of over 800. However, when the landlord looked at it, and they had a pretty good job, they were making about, what was it? About 80K a year.
Yeah.
With 800 credit score.
Can I guess what the landlord said? They said, yeah, the credit score is good. Okay, they could have said one or two things. Okay,
right. Go on.
One, they could have said the credit score is good, but he doesn't have a long established history. Number two, that means like he only has. You mean
in terms of work? Cards. He's talking about.
Huh?
Oh, you mean the credit on the? You mean credit cards?
Yeah. He doesn't. Like he has two cards with a limit of 1,000, something like that, right?
Right.
Or he could have said that his credit score is really good, but it's the reverse of that. He has like 5 cards with the limits of 20K. And he pays it on time all the time because his credit score is good, right?
Right.
But still, it's kind of risky because he has too much liability.
He's carrying too much debt.
Yeah.
Which was the case.
It was the case? Yeah.
Yeah. He had...
That's why I'm smart.
It wasn't just like credit cards, but he also had student loans that he was paying back.
Oh, okay.
And so with all of that, it just, they felt as if he's carrying too much debt.
Yeah.
And he might not be able, or if he hits like a bump on the road, he might not be able to pay that month's rent. So he did get rejected a couple of times. But in the end, we had, I ended up, getting him to polish up his application quite a bit. We got not only references from a previous landlord, written, we also got references from his professors. He was a master's of finance economics at U of T. So we got that as well.
Really?
Yeah, and his credit score was beautiful. It was 800. It was over 800. But he did carry the debt. But here's the thing: this is the way you gotta pitch it, though. This is the sell. It's that, yeah, you know what? He's carrying a bit of debt. He's carrying quite a bit of debt, and it's a legitimate concern. However, here's somebody that did an undergrad in finance at U of T, and then they did a master's of finance at U of T. He was the president of the finance and economics club at U of T, or president or treasurer. He was in that club in any event. And here are all these references. If he was an irresponsible person, he wouldn't have these references, and he wouldn't have a really good credit score.
Yeah.
You don't really carry that much debt and still have an 800 credit score. That is a responsible person that knows how to manage their money and pay their debts and pay their bills on time. That's right? And so that was a sell. And that's literally what I had to pitch and be like, listen, you can say, yeah, they're carrying a lot of debt, but you can go with somebody else that has less debt and perhaps a lower credit score, but I'm pretty certain you'll have more trouble with that person than you will with my client, because they're carrying the debt, but they're managing their debt. This is a finance major, not just a major, a master's in finance. He knows how to handle his money. He knows how to carry it. And you're not going to have a problem with this guy.
Just to indicate.
In addition to that, when he left this previous property, not only did he clean it, he hired professional cleaners to clean the property.
Okay. Yeah.
People don't do that. Tenants don't do that. Tenants will barely even vacuum and they take off.
Yeah.
This guy actually had Molly Maid come in and clean the damn place out.
Yeah, what?
Molly Maid.
What's that?
It's a professional cleaning service.
Okay. Yeah.
He had them come clean the entire place out.
I'm just saying, just to indicate the differences between us, though, I would not think to tell my client to get a reference letter from a university professor, because in my opinion and the way I look at things, I don't think, and maybe this is ostentatious of me to say, but
ostentatious.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I have a large vocabulary. I read a lot, but point being, I don't think I draft my own clauses as well. I do.
Yes.
I don't get the front desk to do my work for me.
No.
But
I don't think they know about it.
Just to say,
go ahead.
This might be braggadocious or whatever, but I don't, or sorry, not braggadocious, but show hubris in the sense that I don't.
You're really just trying to drop words,
I'm not. I'm not. Can I just finish my point?
Sure, Pacho. Go on.
Yeah. My point
Chapo,
is
sorry.
to show the different approaches. In my opinion, either if I'm on the tenant side or the landlord side, I don't care what his university professor says. I'm not hiring a tutor, or I'm not trying to work with a tutor here. I'm trying to work with a tenant that's going to be occupying. He could be the greatest student in the world, but to me, doesn't mean he is a good tenant. Now, I'm not saying it was a wrong approach. No, I'm not saying it was a wrong approach by you. Just to show that I would not tell my clients, go get references from professors. I would say, let's just reassure them on the financial side of things, on the tenant side of things, right? That would be my approach. Not to say your approach is wrong. Well, there's two different ways of doing achieving the same goal at the end of the day.
Right, I get that. And, I think this was the first time I actually asked him to go. I asked any of my clients to go to the university and get a reference letter. The reason why I got that is because I wanted to sell his character. It's a character reference, right? It's not necessarily just like, he's a great student. It's about selling his character, the kind of person he is. He's a meticulous individual that is very organized, and he's very particular about what he does, how he manages money, what kind of living or how he lives, right? We looked at a bunch of different properties, and if he was to see scrapes on the wall, he'd be like, I don't want it. I'm like, my friend, that's an easy paint job.
Oh, he's like, he was very high.
He was very particular, and it got to the point where I was like, listen, there's no point in looking at previously occupied units. For you, the only way to go is for a brand new unit, unoccupied, straight from the builder. And so we changed strategies. We stopped looking at older ones. We went for brand new units. And once again, you got to understand who your client is and what they're like. And then you also have to understand what the landlord's, requests are going to be, what the landlord's going to be looking for. And in this case, I didn't want him to go in with 3, 4, 5 months of payments up front. Mm-hmm. I figured another way where he doesn't have to financially put a lot of money on the table. And it was about selling his character. The reference letter from the university, his previous landlord, also helped seal the deal. And we had the landlord say that he had the unit professionally cleaned upon vacancy, right? So that all of that stuff combined, and I even included his resume just to show how extensive his resume is. Now, I don't do this with every tenant, and it doesn't work with every tenant. You got to have somebody that's, one of those type A, super specific, meticulous, detail-oriented individuals that has that kind of a background that you can sell the character and let the landlord know, you don't need to worry about this person destroying your place and not paying rent on time. This person is way above board. They're probably more above board than you are, right? And so we got the job done that way. I've had other tenants that I was like, oh, for the love of God, I wouldn't be able to do that. The only way we can get you in is if we offer several months of payments up front, because you don't have the credit, you don't have the greatest job, and perhaps you haven't even been there for too long. And so the credit, the application, like the credit and the employment, the references, your ID, all of that is just security in the eyes of the landlord. That is them filtering and qualifying tenants for their property, but also creating security and safety for the landlord to say, this person I can trust with my property.
That's the main course,
right?
In my opinion.
Right. And then if you don't have that, then it's like, okay, well, here's 5 months, 4 months, 6 months of payment up front. I do want to live here, and I will pay you rent on time, in full, on an ongoing basis. Give me a chance, and I'll prove myself.
Well, here's the other side of things. Like, as I said, I've worked with tenants, I've worked with landlords, right? So when I work with landlords, my first time ever working on the landlord side, I think I got lucky because I did not. It's not as if I did not.
You're a professional. You don't get lucky.
Well, no, I'm saying not in terms of getting the clients, but in terms of everything going without a hitch. Because
it was a joke.
There was an offer that came in. It was a joke?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You're not that funny. That's why.
Hold on.
I was just being sardonic.
I did interrupt, but doesn't he look like Chapo? Sorry,
Yeah.
I keep calling him Pacho. He looks like Chapo, doesn't he? Yeah. Everyone, comment
You're not
if you think he looks like Chapo.
It's just a.
They're gonna see
object.
this.
It's not a person there. But anyways, as I was saying, working on the landlord side of things, first time I did so, I kind of got lucky where I made a mistake of not screening the tenants that came way too hard. I just looked at their job letter, their credit report. I obviously called.
What do you mean by way too hard?
Well, let me explain. I screened the tenants,
right,
but I didn't go that step beyond to just fully confirm that they're good people, right? So I just looked at the basic documents. I followed up with a few numbers here and there.
Right.
But what happened was I actually was talking to another realtor who was much older than me, much more experienced. He said, no, you got lucky. Like, you have to go that step beyond. So that was really in my mind because, you know, I wanted to avoid a horror scenario. And obviously you can never avoid that. I've had horror scenarios. Maybe there's stories we could tell. You know the stories. Okay. But point being, and you can check out a few of those stories on my YouTube channel, SaberiSixRealEstate. But anyway, I
have nothing.
But
talk about being, shameless plug.
The next time I worked for landlord side, what I did was I actually found their Facebook. And I found pictures, the tenants' Facebook. Because obviously you have their information, you have their photo ID, the names and all that. I found their Facebook, and I found pictures of them with like the biggest dog I think I've seen.
And let me guess, they put no pets in the application.
No pets. So they put no pets. Then I called them once. It was a huge dog. Like, just to show, the dog was most likely like half a valley. That's huge, right? Would you say?
In height?
No. In like mass in height. It was a very small person can ride it as a horse. Just to say that.
Hold on. You're talking about like one of those Swiss like mountain dogs? Like
no, very, very hairy. Very, very hairy.
Yeah, like what do they call, like Beethoven or something? There's that one movement. Yeah, like that.
That's what they look like. I don't know if that was a breed or not. But point being,
yeah, that is half my size. That's bigger than me, bro. Why are you trying to say I'm like
Are they bigger than you?
Are you kidding? Yeah. If I was to kneel down.
But no, okay. I'm saying half of your size sitting like this.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Sitting down, sure.
All right. So
I was thinking
find
standing.
these pictures, and I call the other side, and I'm like, "Hey, I knew I already asked them that they did not, did they have a pet or not, and they said no. But I didn't want to just come out and say, hey, you're lying to me. They have a pet. So I was just saying, hey, I don't know if I asked you this or not. Do they have a pet? And the guy kind of got a sense that I was, getting at. He's like, yeah. Oh, they actually. Oh, I forgot to say this. Which he didn't forget to say this. He lied.
Right.
Oh, they have a small dog. So he never said, oh, not
small dog.
Listen, he graduated from lying to me. He graduated 1 grade to say, to a lesser lie. They have a small dog.
Yeah, I forgot. Yeah.
All right. So basically, at that point, I'm like, hey, I found this Facebook photo. There is no way this dog is small. So what are they bringing this dog? We have to be on the same page here. Like, you can't lie to me, because if you lie to me, my client think I'm lying to them, right?
What you should have done is be like, so what do you, how do you define small? Give me like in pounds or height, and then send a picture of what you found on Facebook. Be like, this is small to you.
Yeah, no.
So then you told me you got to be on the same side. Okay.
Yeah. So we have to be on the same side here. And he said, "Oh, sorry, I forgot. I'm sorry, I didn't tell you. I'm sorry, I didn't tell you." And but they got rid of the dog.
What do you mean they got rid of the dog?
Like, I asked that. What do you mean? He's like, "Oh, they have a friend who's gonna keep the dog now, and they'll go visit the dog every weekend or some shit."
Right.
Right. And I said, "Look, at this point, man, like, this my property. The property I have is in a good area, in hot demand. I'm not gonna just look to finish this deal. Like,
right.
No, I don't believe you.
Good
you
on you.
could be telling the truth.
You're right.
Right. And luckily, it got done like a week later.
Mm-hmm.
But still, like,
with a different tenant.
Oh yeah, of course.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But
they got rid of the dog. They're gonna leave it at their friend's house.
No.
We've heard this many times. This does not really work with any landlord.
So yeah, he was obviously lying.
Yeah, of course.
You probably have a few horror stories.
Oh my God, are you kidding?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the ones before I actually get into the main story, which was literally a horror story. Recently, I had a property up in Bradford, and I was screening people over the phone. And so, because I didn't want to,
what do you mean by that? Over the phone, people were calling you?
Yeah, they're calling about the property.
I mean, sorry.
I wasn't really dealing with the agents. I was dealing with the tenants directly. So essentially, one of my close friends decided to put her up on Facebook, and I said, you know what? What I'm gonna do for you is I'm gonna screen the calls for you, and then once I've screened the tenants, you then meet the tenants and you guys sign the agreement, right? So because I don't want
so you were working pro bono. You were working
yeah. I was doing them a favor, and so I posted on Facebook, and everyone was calling off Facebook, and like so many people, I was just like, how are you living? Because this is the question I would ask: how much are you taking home on a bi-weekly basis?
What were they saying?
One of them couldn't even answer the question. She's like, I don't know. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know what you're making bi-weekly? Every 2 weeks, when you get your paycheck from your company, you don't look at the paycheck? Like that, at minimum. I've looked at when I was working, even today, every time I get my commission check, I look at it and I make sure that everything is calculated accurately before I deposit that. Before, when I was working at a company, I would look at every paycheck I was receiving. I just wanted to know, is this in line with the amount of hours I worked, and are the deductions accurate? So she couldn't answer that. And then she gave me a number.
How much was it?
I don't remember exactly. She said like $1,400 bi-weekly. So then I was like, okay. And then she just kind of threw that out there. She's like, oh, I just did my taxes actually. And this was like right around February, March. I'm like, okay, so what was your gross income for the year that you filed? And she's like, 45,000. So I did some quick numbers, and I was like, this doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
Because right now, based on what you said you're taking home before taxes on a bi-weekly basis, is less than $45,000 you just said that you're claiming.
Well, just to be fair, I'm not saying this is actually the case. Just to be fair, maybe she meant net. What she was taking home net, $1,400.
I said before taxes. What are you taking home? What are you taking home before taxes? Your gross. Right? Because people get confused with net pay and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Right? They don't even know where to look sometimes. But in any event, even if it was net pay, if I was to add on 30% taxes to that, it still wasn't 45,000. And I was like, these things don't line up.
You don't add up.
And she's like, why are you interrogating me? I was like,
because it's my job.
This is my job.
Yeah.
I'm here to represent the landlord and make sure that I get him a good person into the property. And if you can't tell me how much you're making, then we have a whole lot of, like, you have other problems and I don't want to deal with it. So I'm sorry, I don't think this is going to be the right fit for you, because at this point, you can't tell me what you're making. So even that, just before we even got into, like, do you smoke? Do you, how many people are moving in? Do you have any pets? You know, all of these other things that I ask, she couldn't answer that. I had one person, her boyfriend was on, he was on EI, and he was taking home, like, I think $1,200 bi-weekly or something. No,
Off of EI?
yeah, he was taking home less than that, actually. She was working and she was making about $1,200 bi-weekly, and he was bringing home like $800 off EI. And I was like, $2,000, and the numbers just didn't add up. I asked her, I was like, listen, based on what you're making and your gross, your family, you and your boyfriend, and the rent being $1,500, how many cars do you have? 2 cars. Okay, so you have 2 cars. That's 2 cars that need to be fueled, that need to be insured. You have 2 cell phones. You need property taxes. You need content insurance, utilities, and all of that stuff. So we're talking about $1,500 for the property. Let's add everything up. You're close to $2,000, and you're like literally taking home $3,000 or just above $3,000 every month. Do you think that after paying for fuel in your car and gas and insurance and your cell phone and all this other stuff, you barely have money for groceries?
Food.
Yeah. Do you think you can afford living here? And she's like, she was just like, she hadn't thought about it. She hadn't put the numbers together. And I was like, listen, honestly, you seem like very nice people, but I don't think you've crunched the numbers to figure out what you can afford yet.
Yeah.
I don't think this is going to be a fit for you.
I've had many of those where you just have to it's almost like putting down people. You know how you put down dogs? It's almost like that. And it's no, I'm not.
It's quite an analogy.
Well, it's very sad to tell. Like, there's certain people who are literally have begged. When I was representing landlords, there were certain people who actually begged me. They actually begged me, and that was very hard to say no. Very hard. Because obviously, I'm a child of immigrants.
But why were they begging?
They were like, we need a place, please. Like they said, I'm begging you, I need a place. And it was very hard. To be fair to me, they were not good tenants. They were not. Their portfolio, I'm not saying they were not good people.
Their portfolio
was horrible. It was horrible.
Tenancy was
horrible. It was horrible. But they were begging me, and it was hard for me to say no, and I had to say no.
Where was the property located?
Finch and Steeles.
Finch and Steeles doesn't intersect, bro.
Bathurst and Steeles, sorry.
Bathurst and Steeles?
Yeah.
Well, then, how much was the lease?
There were, so with this property,
listen, go to Scarborough or something.
With this property, what we were doing is, and this is for people who don't know, sometimes with larger houses, you rent out the first floor and the basement separate. So the basement was going for $2,500. Sorry,
basement?
The main floor was going for $2,500. The basement was going for around $1,800.
$1,800?
Yeah, it was a large basement.
Oh, jeez. And they wanted the basement?
Yeah, I mean, it's Bathurst and Finch.
Yeah, no, it's decent area. It's a good area.
Did I say? What did I initially say?
$1,800 for the basement, $2,500 for upstairs.
Did I say Bathurst and Finch, or did I say?
You said Finch and Steeles,
Yeah,
and then you said Bathurst and Steeles.
This is Bathurst and Steeles. No, I'm just very tired, people. Very tired.
Uh-huh.
It's Bathurst and Steeles.
Chapo is tired.
It's Bathurst and Steeles.
Bathurst and Steeles.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the basement was going for $1,800. The upper floor was going for $2,500.
Okay, well then you gotta tell them, like, listen.
She was applying for the basement too.
You gotta go to a different area.
I didn't even want to deal with it.
You can't, like, $1,800 is a lot for a basement apartment. It is.
1,800. It
Yeah.
is. It was no.
Like,
It's not.
granted, it was a large
It's
basement
actually not.
apartment.
It's actually not. Trust me, it's not. In that area, it's not. It's not Richmond Hill. We're talking about like major intersection in
Bathurst and Steeles. On the north side of Steeles or south side?
on the south side.
So it was in Toronto.
Yeah.
Because just on the other side, it's Vaughan.
No, it's on south. It was in Toronto, south side.
Right.
It wasn't
in any event. Like, I mean, like,
Steeles. It was like a couple of streets up that.
whatever. In any event.
So 1,800 for that area is not. It's actually low. I've had listings where the basement is 2,400, and it's not worth 2,400. I would never rent it personally for 2,400.
Yeah, well, obviously somebody's overpriced it for
It
2,400.
wasn't overpriced.
Come on.
was
It
not
must be a
overpriced.
really nice, like 9-foot ceilings in a
It
basement.
was not nice whatsoever. We listed it for 2,400. I told my client, look, I think it's a bit high. We ended up leasing it at 2,200.
How high was the ceiling?
It was that was the problem getting rid of it. It was actually low ceilings. Take this in. It was large, low ceilings, 3 bedrooms, full kitchen, separate entrance and exit.
How many square feet are we talking about?
How many square feet would you say that this unit is right here? Our studio.
If it was this size,
How-
this is not a studio.
It's our studio.
Oh, our studio. It's like, what? How dare you insult my place?
No, how many square feet would you say this? This is probably
This
600.
is 640 something, 650
That was probably 750 ish.
square feet.
Yeah. It's very narrow. You gotta understand.
Dude, that's small. I'm surprised.
It went for 20. Trust me.
That's crazy.
It went for 2,200
That's crazy.
because it was worth 2,200. Sometimes the market gives you certain trends where you're like, okay, this doesn't make sense to me, but if the market says so, this is what. And it wasn't even indicative of a bubble. Maybe it was. I'm not,
When was it?
early 2019. So
Yeah, rents were higher then.
yeah, and that's
Rents
what
were
I'm
higher.
saying.
But in any event, like, I mean, just walk north of Steeles,
To be fair,
and the rent's cheaper.
To be fair, I had 2 full washrooms. 2 full. So 2
Yeah.
separate showers. That
Yeah,
had-
but I like just yesterday we toured a basement. It was in Richmond Hill, granted, but it was a large basement apartment. It must have been about, I would say, around 700 to 800.
But here's the thing. This was
Fully just recently renovated, new laminate floors, new kitchen, pot lights, everything. Nice sized bedroom, full bathroom, and they were asking. That was 12 or 1,300.
well, as I said. To be fair, this had 2 full, and it was very close to the major intersection. It was like a 3-minute walk.
Hey man, good for you. I wouldn't have paid it, but
I
good
didn't
for
pay
you.
it. It's not.
No, good for you for getting the 2,200 from
Yeah.
the tenant.
Well,
Well done. I would have told my client, let's find something else. There's no way. But how did we get on the subject? Oh, people were begging
The
you.
girl was begging me for that. Not for that one. For the
Oh, for a
different one, we're
different-
at 1,800.
1,800.
Yeah,
Look,
yeah.
listen, you gotta go to Scarborough or
Interesting enough-
Etobicoke.
Interesting enough, this one for 2,400 was actually in the same area. It was Finch and Bathurst.
Mm.
That area, I worked a lot in rentals in that area. I'm sure we can tell the story later. But anyways, so do you have any horror stories?
Horror stories?
Yeah.
The worst horror stories. I can't even say it. The worst horror story that I have is when I first started off in this crazy world of real estate, and I was very foolish, and I made a huge mistake in which I had this guy come to the house, and he brought his little kid, and he said, he had a long story, and this is where I made the mistake.
Were you on the listing side or the
Listing side. And I asked for his paperwork. He didn't have a lot of it, and this is also way up north. Like, this isn't in the city. This was up in Mosadeq.
Wow, it's
Right.
pretty up north.
Yeah, so it's very far north, and things are a little bit different up there than it is down here.
Well, it's a different municipality, right?
Right. It's just that, and the way of doing business. Like, I mean, it's a bit more community oriented, and everyone knows everyone, and it's a smaller place.
Yeah.
So I made the mistake of not asking the tenant to give me all of the paperwork, and
Really?
I went based off my gut feeling, which
must have been a big feeling.
well, I gave him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Not even really my gut feeling. It was more like the benefit of the doubt because he came with a sob story.
That's what I was talking about.
Right.
One was begging me, but you were saying.
But this was like one of my first deals I ever did. This, like, if somebody was to come to me with a sob story now, I'll just hang up. It's like, listen, I'm sorry for your misfortunes. I can't help you. Have a nice day. You don't have the paperwork. I'm not entertaining your story. If you have the paperwork, I'll look at it, and then I'll talk to you in person. We'll go see the property together if I'm satisfied with your paperwork. If I'm not satisfied with your paperwork, I'm not interested in your story and the rest of it. That's like, now I have a completely different approach, and a lot of people listening to this might say I sound like a jerk, but you know what? I got to look out for my client because I don't want my client to end up in the same situation as this previous person did, this previous client. And like, it was literally a shitstorm. Mm-hmm. This guy came in, and he was also on disability. And he said he'll forward his disability payments directly to the landlord, which they can do. But what I didn't know is that they can also turn it off, and you have no recourse. No. Right? You can't call the disability office and say, "Hey, what happened to the payments?" They say, "Listen, he asked us to turn it off, and you're not our client. He's our client, the person on disability, and they can do whatever they want with the payments." Right? So that got cut off. He stopped paying rents. Not only did he stop paying rents, I once walked into the property, and I walked in because I went up there to give him a notice because he hadn't been paying. Mm-hmm. And I come up to the property, and the front door had been kicked in. Like it was kicked in. Like it was like a break and enter.
Really?
Yeah. Like you couldn't lock the door anymore. It was kicked in.
It was still in the frame, right?
Yeah, they were still on the frame, but the lock mechanism wouldn't work anymore because it had been pushed through the wood. Right? So I was like, I yelled out, hello? Nobody answered. So it's like, has this place been robbed? Has it been abandoned? I walk inside because at this point I'm thinking this place has been, abandoned, or it's been robbed. Maybe he's not home and it just got robbed. I walk in and the place is a complete mess. Like, dude, when I mean mess, I'll get into the details about how big of a mess this was. I walk into the first bedroom, the second bedroom. It was a 2-bedroom property. It was like a smaller bungalow. I walk into the the second bedroom, which happens to be the first one right up the stairs. And here he is. He had his cat cradled and he's laying on the floor, sleeping. He jumps to his feet and he loses his mind. Like, he starts yelling at me.
Why was he sleeping on the floor with his cat?
Have you ever watched Dave Chappelle?
No.
Okay, well.
Not a big fan.
Oh, what?
Nah.
There's something wrong.
He doesn't tickle my funny bone.
He's hilarious.
No, I respect him. He's not my cup of tea. But.
Okay. So, in any event, anyone that's listening, if you've watched Dave Chappelle, you know that he's done this one skit with, who's that rock star?
Anyways, get to the story. We'll go.
No, it's very important that I tell you who the rock star is. I gotta look this up.
While you're looking that up, let me just tell the people that, in my opinion, you don't sound heartless when you just tell the honest truth. Is that we have to be hard on people, right? We have to scrutinize and screen tenants on the landlord side because at the end of the day, it's our client's property and our client's time and energy. So I don't think that's why you sound like a jerk. You just are a jerk for different reasons. But
Thanks.
Yeah.
Rick James.
Oh,
The Rick
he
James
looked like
skit.
Rick James?
No. So no. It's not that he looked like Rick
The
James.
cat looked like Rick James.
It's that in that skit, Rick James says, "Cocaine is a hell of a drug." And that's why he was laying on the ground sleeping.
That's why you
cradled
have to look the skin
with the dog.
Just to say
Yes,
that?
just to say
I
that.
thought it was a visual thing. I thought you were supposed to
No.
show me what he looked like.
He looked coked out. That's what he looked
You have
like.
to show me. You have to Google that just to say cocaine is a
You
hell of a
asked me
drug.
why he was laying on the
Okay.
ground. This is why. He was. I'm pretty sure he was coked out. He was on various drugs.
Well, obviously he's on drugs,
Right?
Well, no, unless you come home drunk, you don't sleep with your cat on the ground. Even then, like, but
it was just
my
he was
question is,
out of his mind.
how did you guys eventually evict him?
So let me continue the story.
Yeah.
So he jumps to his feet. He loses his mind and everything. And then I calm him down. I was like, listen, dude, like, here's the notice. You haven't been paying. I've tried calling you like 5-10 times. I've emailed you. You haven't been responding. This is the only way I could come. Like, this is the only way. I have to come up here. And then the front door was kicked in. So I thought maybe, something was wrong. So that's why I came in.
Yeah.
It's not that I just wanted to walk into the property. I know I can't just walk into the property. I need to give you 24 hours notice. And I did. I sent an email. So technically that is 24 hours written notice. Whether you open that or not, like, I can't control that.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So I gave notice. I did go. I didn't really have the intention of walking into the property, but I'm glad I did because, the place ended up being it was disgusting. I walked through the property. There's dog and cat feces everywhere.
Why is it?
Despite him saying he doesn't have any pets, he ended up having a dog and a cat, and there was feces everywhere. There was urine everywhere. There was poop dried to the carpet pretty much everywhere. I looked at the hardwood floors. There were scratches that were like a 1/4 inch deep. That doesn't happen with just regular dogs.
No.
The regular dogs is like a surface scratch. This was as if like he had taken a hammer and he had hit the ground and just scraped it around the floors. The hardwood floors were completely ruined. The oven door, it's got the glass so you can see through. You turn on the light and you see what's
Scratch?
happening. Not scratch, kicked in.
Oh,
It was
wow.
broken completely.
So did this
there
guy
was-
initially come to you with a sob story with a kid? Is that what you said?
With a kid, he did
Was
have
that
some
his kid, or did he
documentation.
just, like,
It was his kid, and he said, I forget his entire story, but it sounded pretty messed up, and it was my own mistake.
but where
it
was the
my
kid?
mistake.
Like,
The kid, I guess, lived with his grandma, the kid's grandma. He just brought the kid to say, I'm starting, I want to, fresh start with my kid in this house.
but he never actually. The kid.
But the
actually
kid never actually ended up living there.
Wow, this guy really.
So
played
then,
the game.
so that dude, like the place, the granite countertop was cracked, like because it was like an island, like an L shape. The seam where it was cracked, which it's nearly impossible to break that. That was cracked. The doors, almost every door, one door was broken in half and off the hinges. All the other doors were off the hinges. Like they were kicked in, punched in. They were all damaged. The bathroom was disgusting. Like there was just urine on the ground. There was soap scum beyond belief. The fridge, afterwards, once we got him out, the fridge had mold. It was just, the place was destroyed, absolutely destroyed. There was like pots and pans that probably had been washed since the first week he moved in.
Yeah.
The place was just absolutely disgusting. There were stains on the ceiling. I don't know how he got stains on the ceiling, but they were there. The doors, the walls were scratched, dirtied up. There was holes in the walls. The entire place was completely destroyed. And the only way we got him out was by filing for an eviction, and that because it was up in Wasaga, the court was up in Barrie, and that took about 6 months.
Yeah, I've made countless videos about this on my own channel.
It was just this. It was horrible.
The process, if you're lucky, the process minimum, I would say it would take 3 months, but that's so rare. In my experience, whether my landlords have dealt with bad tenants that other agents brought, that's most often the case. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I've never brought tenants that bad. But one case where I did get this listing to lease it, but the tenants were currently there, so they had to leave for me to bring in new tenants, and the tenants that were already there, someone else brought, right? The agent before me. We had to evict them. It took 8 months because I'm sure you know this, but for the people, what happens is once you finally do convey the eviction notice, they put the court date or the landlord tenant board date. What? How many days in the future would you say? A month?
So essentially, they have, I think, no longer than a month. I think they have up to 15 days to come up with the rent, and then
you sort of know. I know all the process. I'm just trying to.
Like it depends.
When you get the final notice that they have to show up, when you get it from the landlord tenant board, that both parties, how would you? It was probably a month, I would say.
A month to 2 months.
So
yeah.
What happens though? It's not as if that on that month, on that date, it's decided.
Yeah. No.
If the tenant skips out,
right,
it's
then
rescheduled.
Yeah.
And since a lot of people do that, and the landlord tenant board is very busy, it doesn't get rescheduled for next week. It gets rescheduled
another month or two.
A month or two.
Right.
And guess what they can do? The tenants. This is what professional tenants do. And this is not my saying. It's our colleagues saying, right? Right. Always stuck in my mind when he says professional tenants. It's such a good way to put it.
That's what they do for a living.
What they do is once they skip out on the first court date, they pay like 20% to 30% of what they owe the landlord. That way, the landlord has to refile their claim for a new amount, the correct amount that is owed, and the whole goddamn process starts again.
Yeah.
So this is like, it's
way too much in the favor of the tenant. And I've been on the tenant side. I've been a tenant before, and like I'll talk about that in a whole different. I'll get into that story later. But it's heavily favored in the eyes of the tenant for the tenant.
Here's the thing. This is a different discussion we can have. I think it should be, but not to this extent. If we're talking about a 50-50 split, I think honestly, in an ideal world, it would be in the favor of the tenants, maybe like 65-35.
Here's the thing. I think,
but right now it's definitely like 85,
like 90.
Yes, 90-10. Dude, that's way too far.
This guy that damaged the property, it costs about $10,000 to repair everything.
Yeah.
New floors, new countertop, new. We have to. There's like you can't replace the door on a stove. The door on a stove is probably the same cost as a new stove, right?
Yeah, you really is.
Like it was crazy. So new stove, new countertops, new floors, new doors. Not only just like the interior doors. This guy banged up there's a door from the garage to the inside. That's a metal door. It's a fireproof door. That was dinged up and damaged. There was dents into that door on both sides.
Yeah.
The front door had to be replaced.
Yeah.
Right? So we're talking about like $10,000 in damages, which we brought all of the invoices and everything to the landlord tenant board. This guy ended up saying that he got robbed, yet he didn't produce the contents of what was stolen, because apparently that goes against privacy. That's, because it's a private matter, they don't have to disclose that.
Yeah.
So how do you know if he actually got robbed or not? You come up with this bogus police report, and it's not a bogus police report. It's a police report, but it's missing pretty much everything, with the exception of the house was robbed on this date, on this time. But you don't actually know what the rest of it is, so you can't determine whether it's an actual, like if an actual robbery happened, or the guy just called the police and say that he got robbed. But other than that, that's all he did. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right? Sure. So that's what he claimed at the landlord tenant board. He claimed he had other mental issues and whatnot. And so they dismissed pretty much our case. Well, no, they favored with us, but they awarded us $1,500.
Yeah.
I was like, there's $10,000 in damages. 1,500? This after 6 months of me driving back up to court month after month after month. And all he did was come up with another excuse as to why it should be deferred. The one time he came to court and he said he had to take the go bus. Meanwhile, his girlfriend dropped him off. And that he lost all of his evidence on the go bus. And so they dismissed court and they delayed it.
People are liars, man.
That was, I think it has to be, there has to be some severe adjustments because in the landlord-tenant board rules, it is heavily favored towards the tenants. And I've been a tenant. Yeah. I actually have a horror story of my own with a
which
landlord.
I think we can get to in a different. I think that's an entire different episode. I have many horror stories as well.
The thing is, the landlord-tenant board, the way I think when it was written, they perceived the landlord as being professional corporations that that own apartment buildings and they have 100, 200, 300 tenants. They're not talking about the mom and pop. Yeah. Landlords. Meanwhile, we're dealing with mom and pops. Yeah.
But no,
that's what we need to deal with.
There are a lot of landlords who own, like, they're in the middle, like they're not mom and pop and they're not a corporation. They own, like, I worked with this landlord that owns 6 to 8 properties in North York. Right. So I don't know how to categorize her exactly. She's not. Keep in mind, she's not buying properties under the name of corporation. She hasn't incorporated, right?
She's still small. I think medium size is somebody that has, 20 to 50 units, and then you have major corporations that own half of the apartment buildings in the GTA.
For sure.
Like, right, there's CapREIT, there's a few different real estate investment trusts. Those guys started off with apartment buildings, and now they own like 20 or 30 apartment buildings each one, which houses, anywhere from 100 to 200-300 tenants. Yeah, those are the big guys. Yeah, the in between, the medium sized guys, I would say anyone from 40, 50 to 100 units, and then the landlord you're dealing with, that's still small. The small time, right?
Those landlords don't get into the business of detached homes. They just
they have their apartments, but they also have legal counsel, on board, where if they really have substantial damages and lost rent, they have in-house counsel that takes care of everything.
And I'm sure that's like a big thing for paralegals. Oh, I got a contract with this big
REIT or of course.
I've been to the landlord-tenant board. I see the same paralegal doing like 7 cases. Yeah,
back to back. Yeah.
Anyways, so that's it for today. I always have my own horror stories. Maybe we can do this in the next episode. But quickly, please subscribe, comment, rate, and review. You can find Ali at.
Are you talking about? Oh, on Instagram. Sorry, why my mind was somewhere else. I was just thinking about my own horror story. You can find me on Instagram, aliem.realtor. You can find me on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and you can also subscribe to my newsletter, which if you leave a comment down below or DM me on Instagram or text me, email me, my information is down below in any event.
Yeah, so is mine.
You can contact me there. I'll add you to my newsletter. And if you have any questions or otherwise, feel free to contact either one of us. We'd be happy to help you. But yeah, Instagram, that's where I do most of my marketing, I guess you could say.
All right. And you can find me, once again, my contact information is in the description as well. And yeah, subscribe, comment, rate, and review, and leave both, I would say, positive feedback and negative feedback. If you have any constructive criticism, I'm open to hear it. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for listening. And as you said, subscribe, hit the notifications.
We're repeating the same thing over and over again.
They gotta hear it twice. We gotta get it into their heads.
It's the 5th time. All right, that's it.
All right, thanks. Bye.